Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, one and all, Lego tubers and fans of Lego Masters. I am here live streaming alongside All Outbreak and Thrawn's Terminal as we are going to be discussing the most recent episode of Lego Masters, Episode 3, the Earthquake episode. I'm joined by my little Vishla pup Enzo. Just for a moment, he wanted to say hi. He's not that camera shy at all. Say hello, Enzo. Anyways, thanks for joining All Outbreak. How are you doing?
Doing good. Really excited for this episode. Loved the challenge last night. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, and Thrawn?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I did a rebranding, so it's not Thrawn's Terminal anymore. It's now just ThrawnsRevenge.
ThrawnsRevenge on YouTube.
Yeah, change.
He just posted a video like 2 days ago, I think. Isn't that right? Just showing off
it was on Monday.
Your mock. So give him some love, guys. Check him out. Yeah, he's just getting started. Hopefully we'll get a lot more content from him. With that said, here, I'm going to let this guy go. There you go, Enzo. And, yeah, honestly, guys, thanks for tuning in. We had one last week. We're trying to make this a weekly show. If you guys are fans of Lego Masters and just tuning in, go ahead and subscribe. Yeah, because we do this weekly, and we love just getting the conversation going on this episode. It was a crazy one. Let's just say that. Definitely not your normal Lego Masters experience. I don't know. What would you guys say?
I mean, did we have something similar last season with kind of shaking? I know obviously we had the bridge as a challenge, but it was really cool seeing this, and I was genuinely surprised by a couple of these structures, how they stood up. Like I had so much fun with this episode.
Yeah, it definitely was not what I expected, because like a lot of the engineering concepts, some of them proved to work and some of them didn't, because I think like timing was a big issue, knowledge of like the different systems as well. The interlocking brick thing, I was surprised at how well it did compared to like what I thought would happen in my mind.
Yeah, totally. There are a lot of teams that you were looking at saying, how are they going to do this? Are they really going to make it work? And then there's some teams that you're probably like, yeah, they look like they're going to kill it. This is going to be an incredible idea. And maybe aesthetically they worked, but a lot of the ones that held structurally were the ones that didn't even look that aesthetically pleasing, like in my opinion. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. Anything else?
Yeah,
I'll start pulling them up.
Definitely, I agree. I think timing was definitely an issue. It kind of showed the 8 hours really ramped it up. I was surprised the one team, I believe it was Susan and Jen, got done their build incredibly fast towards the end. That was pretty cool. But yeah, like some of these concepts for like engineering stability, like I was looking at some, I was like, this thing's coming toppling down. It was like, no, like I was genuinely shocked by some of them.
No, me too. Let's see. We can start pulling them up. Thanks again. All Out Brick was able to pull some of these stills for me, so we'll be able to take a look at pretty much all of them. Let's go ahead and look at the first one. So this was... Yeah, I really liked this one. This is Caleb and Jacob. Now, Caleb and Jacob, theirs was... it was kind of like the... kind of like a construction site going on. Is that what this one was? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I love
the
crane.
Decoration. Mm-hmm. It was very clever, but I think they also ran into the time constraint problem of the main structure was really good, and then the top part, since they ran out, as the Brickmaster said, there was not enough Technic, and the connection was way too loose. And that was the first thing that broke, which sucked. Well, the crane as well, but, that doesn't count.
Yeah, and these are the twins. I love, there was a moment when they were obviously it's to build up tension between commercial breaks, but they were like, we get wide-eyed and we get really quiet when our people are, presenting our creation. And it was, obvious because, I think when I was going into this, watching the teams build, they have really good synchronicity and, very much, work very well together, obviously, being twins and all, but I, thought what they had color-wise and structure-wise, especially with, the crane and all that, looked, really cool. And then, all of a sudden, you start to see it fall apart when they were at, scale, I think they were at, numbers 4 or 5, and already it was starting to, shake, and it was like, oh, man, oh, man. And, I don't know, were they in the bottom, were they one of the 3 bottom teams, actually?
I think they were. Right?
Yeah, they were, but I as soon as I saw that they were kind of when they crashed on level 8, it was like they're not going home because just the way it was judged, where the stability put you in the bottom tier, but then it came to aesthetics. Like when I saw this build on the outside, I was like, yeah, they're safe no matter what happens here.
Right.
I felt that the judging definitely made some of what I thought would be better or worse different than what the judges thought, because they went like structural integrity first and then design second, right? And like classifying.
Were you surprised with how lenient they were with different sections falling off?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that was really lenient. I was like, man, if I see something disconnect from the main base, I'd count that.
Yeah.
I'd count it. Like, it is no longer connected, that shouldn't count. But they were like, oh, as long as it stays. I'm like, all right, so like, you could put a bunch of like string connections or something, get it just to wiggle around, and that counts, right?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
If you put a bunch of Technic lift arms, you could almost just, it would never fall apart if you braced them.
Right. Stuff would just be dangling. Well, then let's talk about the one that I feel like got away really like lucky team, which are technically the engineers, right?
Yeah.
The engineering was perfect.
Yeah, Moto and Paris. You know, they were having a lot of trouble aesthetically and saying, yeah, we're not being able to make these honeycombs in the exact shape, 'cause it's supposed to be like bees, right? And or like have that kind of aesthetic. And literally all of the plates, everything aesthetic with it fell off. Like, I guess it looked cool. The thing is they had that Technic on the inside and that insanely well-built structure that kept it going. I mean, it only fell at the very end because they tossed it to like 11 or something, right?
Yeah, and I mean, those plates on the outside, I mean, that was pretty ugly, but like as soon as those fell off, I was like, are they done? And they just kept going. I was like, oh no, like I think this was the first build where I was like, oh, they're just gonna let this play out until everything comes apart.
Right. No, exactly. And I think, you know, like they were having a lot of issues just as a team, like for a while, you know, saying, so like I was worried pretty much the whole time, but seeing it last as long as it did and make it to 11, I guess was the end all for them to be able to make it through to as far as they did.
Right. And it was kind of like a job check for them again. I know they had some iffy engineering with some of the motor functions so far. So I was watching this, I was like, if they lose this competition in terms of stability, like these dudes ought to be like fired or something. Like,
right? Like they have to feel a little bit bad that they're like, I mean, this is their profession in a way.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
the plates wiggling was sketch AF.
Yeah, I was very, very concerned for a while there. Next, let's talk about, and I'll say they're probably my current favorite team, which is Dave and Richard. Now, this was the one where he's like a math teacher, right? And he, I think, like, hit the nail on the head for what they were going for. And their structure lasted a long time because his whole idea was we're going to keep the inside of this build. The inside of the building was hollow, but the really integrity of the structure and what's going to keep this from falling over was built on the outside, which I don't think we saw any other team do, right?
No, there was the other team. There was the other team that did, they had the structure, the like connection on the outside, but they were solid on the inside. The like lighthouse one.
So how did you guys feel about Dave and Richard?
It was very smart. It was very, very smart. Making it hollow was a good decision and definitely like out of the box thinking. In terms of design, I mean, me personally, I think it's really plain, but the concept of putting the Fibonacci number sequence into it, I think really saved the plainness and made it make sense.
Because that's a big
using
thing.
Using the bright colors as well was like really smart.
These
and engineering definitely made up for the lack of like.
Because
just more
visually aesthetic looking, more like an actual building. I think it's that what they were really looking for is, one, the structure obviously makes it to 9, 10, 11, the degrees that they were going up, but then also it was just like, what is the story you're telling, what's the goal of your like imagery, and this was his goal, and they definitely succeeded at that, which is why they were in the top. They won, right? They were the best. They
did win best overall.
Yeah, they won.
They won best overall, yeah. So, props to them.
It's definitely the structural integrity that I think made them win. Absolutely. Like the fact that it toppled over and was still 100% together. That's
right,
what
yeah.
really is impressive.
Like Will even like picked it up off the ground and was like, this thing is still together.
Still there.
That's why, yeah, I'd say like they're one of my favorite teams right now. They're just doing a great job. All right, so next up we have cake number 1. There were 2 cakes. This is Lauren and Brian. These are the siblings, right? And so they, aesthetically, I think it looks really nice.
Very nice cake.
But they were kind of in the middle. They weren't in the bottom or the top. They were in the middle because I think they lasted till about 8 or 9. But what I noticed when I watched this one specifically, when it was shaking, was that this structure managed to, and a lot of buildings followed suit, where a plate would fall apart. But it would just stay there and just kind of bounce around, even though it was like unattached. And it would just like, by sheer luck of the way that like whatever they had that was shaking, just managed to like stay balanced enough that it would made them last a couple more rounds. Like, that was a big thing that happened with this, is like, part of them fell apart. But I mean, I was like, yeah, this is kind of what they're looking for, is at least like, I think aesthetic wise. I actually thought this cake looked technically better than the other team that lasted longer, but again, they didn't last as long. I don't know. What do you think, Thrawn?
Yeah, I think it was definitely very pretty and very well constructed. Maybe not as well as others, but it was still really good. Yeah, the double cake thing kind of sucks. I think that was a little bit against the 2 of them, but the cake definitely looked better. I think it was a good safe play, I'd say. It was a good safe play, which made them not be in the bottom 3.
I agree. All right, next we have Maria and Phillip. These are the couple, the married couple, that even I in the first couple episodes was like, ooh, I don't know, but then they kind of like really killed it with this. This might have been one of my favorite as well. I know they said they wanted like the plants to fall off and the branches. That didn't exactly happen, but I don't know. How did you guys feel about this build?
I didn't expect
I really
it to do
liked
as well
their
as it
design
did.
too.
Yeah.
No, same here. I did not expect it to go very far, and I think this still might have been at the point of where I was like, okay, when all of this stuff comes apart, like the plants and everything, are they going to disqualify them? And then no. But I liked what they did on the outside of it. It was one of my favorite aesthetic ones that we saw out of this challenge.
Right, me too.
And
Me too. And I think one of the things that they're looking for here is obviously not everything that they wanted to happen happened. Like, I know, the plants kind of like they wanted them to all fall off, but they didn't. But again, I agree like with what you guys are saying. Aesthetically, like it just really worked. And I mean, I think, it's their team to keep an eye on, especially going forward. Like, they managed to pull off a lot in this build, and they were one of the ones that lasted the longest, right? They were there, they went to like 11, right?
They went to 10. This was the ball joint one too. So I was watching this with my family, and they were like, "Are they using Bionicle parts?" I was like, "Kinda," but like, oh, I would have loved the Bionicle shout out there.
Yeah, well, they do. They say Technic,
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's go to the next. Who do we have? Okay, yeah, Mark and Steven. Thrawn, do you want to go ahead and start talking about this build?
Mark and Steven. Which one was this one?
This
oh, man,
was
my,
the.
okay, sorry, my
this
YouTube
was
delayed.
this was the bottom
this
to
one
top.
was really good. The concept is there, right? Because there was the build that was last year for the bridge, right? And I'm assuming they probably saw that build. We're like, oh, the plate connection will work, right? But I think what they forgot is the plate connection works in one direction, right? And if the plates were the first thing that started breaking. I think if they did plates on the inside and the outside, they probably would have held on for a lot longer and found a way. If they found a way to like interlock the plates into the build itself and not just like using a snot brick and just shoving a plate on there, they probably would have lasted way longer. Maybe like Technic probably would have also helped. The design I really like, a little boring in the color choices, but the concept is there and the story was there. So I think they were good. They also a little, I'd say safe. They played it safe, and that was
yeah.
they had mentioned that they have done challenges like this before. So when they lasted to 8, and then the rest of the teams were kind of equal to and greater, then it was like, that experience didn't really show for them. That was kind of surprising because they are really talented builders, and I'm sure we'll get to see them really shine as the season goes on. But this was one where I was a little disappointed in what their result was. But
Right.
Can't really fix everything. But
No, I agree. Let's see, Mark and Steven. Then we had, okay, yeah, Michelle and Natalie. This was cake number 2. Now they made it in the top 3, right? And these are the moms, if I'm correct, right?
no, Michelle and
No,
Natalie
these are
did
the
wedding cake.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
wedding cake. These are the 2 really good friends.
The interior designers.
They managed to be in like the middle teams, not the top or the bottom. I mean, what would you guys say? Let's just compare cakes, right? As far as design, because they both lasted about the same amount of time. What would you say in the aesthetics and the build would differentiate them? And if you guys had to choose one that you might have liked better?
I definitely would choose the siblings cake. I think the siblings cake was way better in terms of like design. It was a little bit more cakey, and that I felt was better. Where like their cake is like more abstract, and thus I felt it took away from the cake concept.
Totally.
I think so too. I think you look at Lauren and Brian's cake, and it's a cake. Like they had the frosting at the different layers, and it looks like Michelle and Natalie tried to kind of replicate this. Like they have the uneven layers of the cake. But if you showed me a picture of this, like I feel like I would have to make kind of like a stare at it for a little bit and be, oh yeah, it's a cake. Whereas the other one was very blatantly what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, totally. I agree. All right, next up we had, after Michelle and Natalie was, okay, Randall and Sarita. This was where, they were trying, because they're like musically oriented, hip-hop oriented. They wanted to make a sort of like record label tower. And, they're, again, one of those teams who, when it came to the shaking, just managed to make it through and squeeze their way into the middle. They weren't in the bottom tier or the higher tier as far as winners and losers goes. But Odd Dude 21 is writing in the chat that, like, I feel like this one was a little bit plain. Like, they could have done a bit more with the design, but I understand that they were really trying to interlock bricks and, like, not go too crazy. But I'd say this was kind of one of my least favorite as far as aesthetically. I liked the idea. I liked the idea of, like, literally, like, a record label, like, tower. How cool is that? But I just remember seeing the final product and being like, I feel like they could have gone a little more with that aesthetic, like the music, the, all of that record label. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think the struggle is definitely the fact that, like, because the first part of the challenge is being structurally stable, and that will decide which bracket you're in, and then your aesthetics will decide what placement of like that bracket, whether you're top, middle, or bottom. And I think the decision of having to go all into your structure and less into your design, it's the best outcome, which is why I was like, iffy on the judging of everything of like, is it structurally sound? What part of it is structurally sound? What part of it is good? What parts come off at one time? And like how that decides everything. And I think the people who decided we're going to focus less on how it looks and more on how it stands, were the ones that ended up doing better than the people who wanted it to look good first and work the structure into it later.
Right. And I think Odd Dude 21's hitting it on the head. It's like, I think the time limit really limited the creativity. Like, they only had 8 hours. I believe sometimes they're given 12, 14. This was like, definitely with some of the teams, you could tell they were like pushed up against the wall as far as it comes down to this, like the amount of time that they have to think, to work together, all that stuff. I agree.
Yeah, the aesthetics on this one were definitely something that was disappointing with this build. But, I mean, it did last long. I didn't really expect it. I know they kept bringing up that Randall has an architecture degree, and they kind of like said it while I was shaking it, like that the architecture degree is getting put to work right now. But I would have loved to see them make it more evident or clear that this is a record label building. Like, I mean, maybe like throw some sort of like records on the outside, or I don't know, maybe try to recreate like the Capitol Records look at the top of the building or something.
Right, Capitol Records, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It just didn't give me that. Like, when I first look at it, I'm like, it's not screaming like music label, record label, but it managed to last longer than some of the other builds, so they got that far. Okay, the next one, these were the sushi guys, the two brothers as well. What's their name again? It's like Zach and
Wayne,
Zach
the golden
and Wayne.
brick.
Zach.
Yeah, and they used the golden brick, which they didn't need to, as it turned out. Like, they weren't in the bottom three because they managed to last. But I understand why they did it. I understand that they felt like it was a bit weak in just the visuals. Yeah, what did you guys think about their overall build?
I agree. I mean, I think their decision to use the golden brick, like, I get it. This is certainly one where it's like you kind of have an idea of how your tower is going to do, and when you were looking at other people while they're building, you can kind of get an idea for like where you could place. But it's such a variable with that shaking that if something bad happens, like it's very possible that you lose that golden brick. And they're good enough to where they can win it again if it gets when it gets put back into play. So I think it's not a complete loss on them. I know one of them was very disappointed they had to use it, but I mean, I get it.
I mean, imagine this. Like, imagine if it had fallen over at like level 5 or 6. It's just like, even though it looks it looks good, it just would have been so disappointing to see them walk just for that because they didn't use it.
Yeah.
So I think at the end, when I really was watching the show and thinking about it, it was smart that they used the golden brick. I think when you put yourself in a circumstance like this, in a problem where your whole building is shaking, you don't really know what's going to happen. Like, you're relying on like a motor to not just trip out and go crazy. I think their decision to use it made sense. Of course, in hindsight, play Sunday morning quarterback or Monday morning quarterback, you're going to be like, oh man, dang it. Like, obviously they shouldn't have used it. It would have been great to hold that on to the next challenge. But I also think it's nice that it's out there again. Someone else could win it. And I'm not too worried that I mean, we'll see, right? But I'm not too worried that they won't last a little bit longer.
I definitely think they'll be able to get the golden brick back. I think it was a safe play, especially in the fact that like they're using a proper engineering concept, right? But executing that concept in the scale that they're working with the time frame they had, that was the struggle. And that ended up ruining the aesthetic concept and them working it on just structure. And then on top of that, they weren't sure the structure was going to work. So I totally understand the concept of why they use the brick.
All right. Now, next we have Tim and Zach, father and son. Spoiler alert, they unfortunately had to leave. They were disqualified after this episode. But I'm going to be honest. Obviously, there's the whole fact of shaking it. But I think this build looked good. Like, I think it was a cool idea, this kind of cat tower. I liked the idea what they put in at the top. I think visually, aesthetically, like as far as a building goes, it wasn't that bad. I mean, that's obviously my opinion.
Yeah.
Problem is they just weren't focused enough on structure, and it broke early, and they were having a lot of issues just from what I could tell. But what did you guys think at the end?
This one I think is so similar to like visually, like when you first glance at it, to what Mark and Steven produced.
Yeah, exactly.
This one, I was so 50-50 on which one should have gone home between Tim and Zach and Mark and Steven. I mean, I think Mark and Steven are definitely the better builders here and will provide more for the challenge going forwards. But I think their buildings are quite similar. Like, they criticized Mark and Steven for using the tan. I don't fully remember if they did it to Tim and Zach as well. And I mean, they were just so close. And they broke at the same level that it was tough to see, like, how they decided that one.
Yeah, Thrawn?
Yeah, I definitely felt... it kind of sucks for them. I definitely think they should have continued, honestly. I didn't think their build was that bad. But, yeah, both Mark and Stevens and the other group, their builds are very similar, but I think the difference is, theirs used a very limited color palette, where the brothers ended up having like a more unique color palette of like putting in the blue, having a little bit of a more interesting story.
That's true.
I think that might have saved them. And then the texturing differences, like the texture of the stud versus the smooth, where theirs is mostly smooth. So that definitely played against them. But yeah, I do feel they were. It sucks. I feel like they could have kept going, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I agree, but that's what happens on this show, and I think their building was standing and it looked good. It was just, they were having a lot of trouble early on, didn't really know the best way to keep it structurally sound that some of the other teams did. But that's kind of what happens with a challenge like this. There's a lot of outside external factors, you know what I mean? Like kind of with the explosion one too. Like I'm excited to see next week the fashion one, because with the explosions in this, you're also like relying on like a motor or like an exploding squib device, and like those sort of things are like, it's hard to know exactly what they're gonna do, you know? Like it's not always your fault that maybe it didn't work out the way you had thought about it. Obviously,
Right.
like there's only so many things you can do, you know, but it's this kind of a challenge like is very tough. Unlike the weight challenge, which I could say this, I could draw a parallel from this to the like bridge building one, but with the bridge building, at least still it's just putting on weight, whereas this was just like a motor is shaking. Like there's a lot of circumstances, like if it goes right just a little further than the other time, you know, is like a little more tricky to do. But I will also say
they can definitely feel luck of the draw sometimes with these like movement, or you know, something that's outside of your hands at times.
Right.
Yeah, another thing too is how quickly is Will switching levels? Does he have the same time? Like, is he staying on the same levels every single time for the same duration? Or is he going, because you could get to, say, level 10 in the same amount of time that another build gets to level 7, and just that time under tension compression, they could just break.
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree. I'll say this episode, it was really fun to see all of them on stage reacting though, and like, yeah, just I loved that. I think we got one more. I forgot. We have
Susan and Jen.
Yeah, Susan and Jen. Surprise, surprise! I remember when we did this show 2 weeks ago, Thrawn and I think you as well, were like, like they seem like they're not only do they have trouble working together sometimes, but aesthetically not always the most pleasing builds. But then again, last week and then especially this week, they managed to really pull through. And I don't know what it is. Like there was a moment in this episode where they were quite literally like pressed for time. They were like, you need to build like, what is it, 500 bricks an hour or something? Or what is it, Thrawn?
They said more than that. They said that the 500 was like a general pace, and that they were going to have to like really crank that up. And I was stunned that they were able to.
It was really good on them. They were able to like make that.
I didn't think they were going to make it. And then when I saw the video that they played of her building the like Wonder Woman, I was like, all right, they got this. It's done. They're going to be fine. Because like if you can build that high, right, that means you understand where your forces are going to be, and like the concept of the main Technic beam that's connected to everything. Well, I think that part kind of slowed them down at the beginning, but once they decided to scrap the aesthetic part and go straight for just good structure, that ended up saving them a lot.
Yeah, it
so
did.
this is the one that I was very surprised, and Jamie was too. Jamie said like, I'm floored after there's broken. I was too, because they were building the central rod and they brought up the Wonder Woman. The difference is that's a static model. There's no lateral forces exchanging going left and right. So when I heard that they were using that same technique, what went through my mind was, is that going to work when now we have lateral forces and lateral movement occurring? And I wouldn't have been surprised if it broke early. I was really surprised how long it lasted.
Totally. I agree. And it's, I mean, I'm going to say that like they're going to surprise us a little more, hopefully. I just know they're like they're my mom's favorite team, so she's happy to see them still moving on, still trudging along, and like surprising everyone with really pulling something together that is just like even a really good builder to be able to move that quickly when they only had like a quarter of the time left and 3/4 of the build yet to go. Like that's just pretty incredible. And yeah, like you said, all that brick, Jamie, one of the brickmasters, was like, oh my god. Like I was floored that this lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, that for me was more impressive, is how they were able to switch gears and start building so quickly and so efficiently. That I was really impressed with. I thought that was incredible.
100%. Well, I guess now we'll just say like overall what we thought of the episode. I'll start like I just thought, I was really excited for this one. It's very similar to like the bridge building one where there's physics involved and there's a lot more out of your control when it comes to these sort of things. And given the fact that we had some engineers and some designers and like it was like it's gonna be interesting to see something like this and what it could do. And it surprised me though. It surprised me who managed to make it and who didn't, and it also surprised me that just like the builds you think didn't look that great aesthetically had something going on like with the engineers. Like there's just like the middle was just managed to hold on as long as they did. Or Phillip and Maria, right? Or theirs with the ball joints, using ball joints. You just would never think that these things could work. Yeah. And literally Brickmaster Jamie was like surprised. Like what the heck? I did not think. Like I've never seen people use that and have it managed to like survive as long. So great episode, in general, obviously like a bit of a weird one when you're walking into expectations and you're not until it comes down to the actual challenge. You just don't know.
Right. I agree. Love the episode. Yeah, it was definitely similar from that physics standpoint to previous ones we've seen with the bridge specifically. And I think some of those like different structures those are really impressive. And I wonder how tested some of these teams were in this before. Mark and Steven specifically addressed it. I wonder how many other teams have experience building these structures and how many were literally thinking on the fly like, okay, we know we want to use some sort of Technic system for stability. How are we going to do this?
Right. And some teams it was like not enough Technic, Mm-hmm. Thrawn, your final thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Definitely didn't go any of the ways that I thought it would. I thought certain teams would do worse, and I thought certain teams would do better. So it was definitely a wild card in my eyes. A very simple concept, but a lot of things can change all of a sudden, which is where, things get exciting. That's good TV.
Yeah, 100%.
So one thing that I'm wondering, I guess, kind of going forwards, I guess, do you think this could be one of those shows where they give teams that have been eliminated some sort of chance to go head-to-head to earn their spot back in? Because I feel like Lego Masters is one of those things where if you're dealt a challenge that's just not in your wheelhouse or something goes wrong that you didn't plan to, you could be the best builder in the world and end up going home. So I kind of wonder if they would ever toy with the idea of having this kind of get your way back in sort of round.
Maybe.
I could
possibly see it.
This is one of those shows that you can tell they're still working on. Like, we're in the early seasons. I definitely could see that happening later down the line. But you also don't know. Like, more episodes is a lot more money in producing, but you also did get more eyes on the show and people tuning in weekly. So that's interesting, And, like, you look at this episode, they literally used it to plug 911, which is just, like, a Fox show. 911, what's your emergency? It's not great. I don't watch that sort of TV. But you can tell that they're trying to use as much as they can to cross-promote their network. And in that case, I don't see why tacking on another episode where some teams get like a revival almost, or like a rebuttal episode to come back, or like have all the ones that are eliminated by like episode 6 or 7, like just the eliminated teams come back again for like, I don't know, their own little 5-hour build or something. Yeah, I could see that being sort of neat. I always said, and this is something I've talked to Thrawn about, is I definitely believe the further we get in after a couple years of seasons of this show, they're going to bring old teams back, winners and losers. Like that's something they do a lot on like fashion shows,
Survivor.
There's a lot of these kind of reality competitions where, seasons down, like favorited teams. Like I could see specifically from last season, Mark and Boone, I could see those guys coming back down the line for sure. They've kept at it. They have like big social media presence, at least Boone definitely does. Like I could see that working out, and I could see down the line definitely teams that were eliminated or made it to the last 2 and didn't quite make it coming back. Like for sure I could see that. I don't know, Thrawn, you'd probably agree, right? Like that's how these shows
definitely
work.
Like especially with how big like Beyond the Brick is and stuff like that, I could definitely see later down the line as the show gets more popular and bigger, more connections of like groups that you normally wouldn't think about as much, or like maybe working closer with Lego or closer with conventions or closer with bigger IPs and stuff as they like possibly want to like branch into this. I think a good thing that we could see out of this as well is possibly if this show gets more and more traction, maybe shows that originally didn't think about working with Lego might start to reconsider.
Right. Like, what do you mean exactly? Example.
Like, maybe I'm trying to think of one that like Lego would accept, right? But like, like maybe one of the more obscure shows that maybe thinks they're too niche to work with Lego for like Lego sets start to like reconsider like a branding option. It's like Lego more and more is starting to accept more people as long as they feel like the traction is there. And so as the show brings in newer and newer viewers, maybe, you know, companies will start to notice this and be like, oh, we could maybe work with Fox on this and possibly have like an exclusive set or something with Lego during this time period. Yeah. I think we'll see more connections of the two maybe get a closer relationship with each other.
I agree. I think that, yeah, it sounds definitely possible. Definitely a thing that could happen.
Family Guy Lego set.
One day, maybe. Still, just like the show, I feel like is too adult. You know, the most there goes like Simpsons.
No, hey man, that Simpsons is kind of out there too, though. So like,
they'll drop an H bomb and an S bomb here and there on their shows. But yeah, awesome. Yeah, so. Great episode. Everybody, thanks for watching. We're going to do another one next week around the same time. I think, yeah, next week's episode is fashion, right? Which they haven't done, and it's honestly really hard to do with Lego in general. Like, building a hat or a shirt is just, like, it's almost pretty much impossible. But you don't know. I mean, from what I could tell from the preview, like, it looked like there were some really cool ideas still. So, I don't know. You guys excited? I'm excited to see what they do.
I'm excited. I know it is hats. They did specify that it's hats during that preview. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. In the preview that we did see one person was stumbling and
yeah, we don't know though. They cut away.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome guys. For the people watching right now, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be doing this again next week. Until then, you can find ThrawnsRevenge on YouTube and on Instagram. Like you said, he's just getting started, so definitely check him out. And All Out Bricks, still pumping out those Bionicle reviews and working on some other stuff, as I'm sure you are. The summer's here, so a lot coming. Yeah, this has been really fun to do as well. I've been trying to like perfect the show as best as I can, and I want to get some more hosts on. Obviously, it's like a hard thing to work, but I feel like we definitely have a tight unit here. We've been doing pretty well, so thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you for having us again, Zach. Tons of fun. Love doing the show with you guys, and super excited for what's in the future.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.